The first time Laura noticed Buddy's ears prick up at the sound of a car door closing 3 houses away, she realized there was something extraordinary about the Belgian Malinois who had come to live with them. A silent vigilance that spoke of years, spent scanning distant horizons for threats invisible to human eyes. Her breath caught as the retired military dog moved to the window with fluid grace, his muscular body tense with purpose, amber eyes tracking movement outside their suburban home with the precision of a soldier still on duty. She hadn't expected this level of alertness when she'd agreed to adopt the retired K9, following her brother's insistence that Buddy needed a family after 8 years of military service. But here he was, standing guard as if their modest 2-story house was as crucial a post as any battlefield he'd patrolled. In that moment of realization, Laura felt a profound sense of protection settle over her home, a feeling she hadn't experienced since her husband's death 3 years prior, and something in her broken spirit began to heal, as if Buddy understood a language of loss that humans had long forgotten how to speak. If you enjoy the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. Laura had first learned about Buddy 6 months after receiving the folded flag at Mark's funeral. The call came from her brother Ryan, a military handler who had worked with dozens of service dogs during his career. "There's this dog, Laura," he'd said, his voice uncharacteristically emotional. "Being retired after his 3rd tour. Belgian Malinois, 8 years old. Smart as hell and still plenty of life left." His handler was reassigned to a desk position after an injury, and Buddy needs a home. She'd hesitated, looking across the kitchen at 9-year-old Lily, who had spoken barely 10 words a day since losing her father. "I don't know, Ryan," Laura had whispered into the phone. "Is a military dog really right for a child who's been through trauma?" Ryan's laugh had been gentle but assured. "These dogs understand trauma better than most humans, sis. They've lived it. Buddy's not just any military dog. He saved my life in Kandahar." It was that last sentence that had made her decision, the debt she felt to anything or anyone who had protected her only brother in that distant desert. Now, 3 months into Buddy's retirement in their home, Laura watched as the dog performed his evening ritual, a methodical patrol of their property's perimeter, before settling in the hallway between Lily's bedroom and the stairs. The changes in their lives had been subtle at first, then transformative. Lily, who had retreated into silence after her father's funeral, had begun speaking again, first in whispers to Buddy when she thought no one was listening, then in full, animated conversations about her day at school, her fingers buried in his thick fur. "Mom," Lily called from the living room, where she was completing homework under Buddy's watchful gaze, "did you know that Buddy can understand counting?" Laura looked up from the bills she'd been reviewing, financial pressures a constant weight since Mark's death. "What do you mean, sweetie?" Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, math worksheet spread before her. "Watch this," she said, eyes bright with excitement. "Buddy, show me 4. The Malinois, who had been lying beside her with chin resting on paws, immediately sat up and tapped his paw against the hardwood floor. 1, 2, 3, 4 precise movements. Laura's eyes widened. "That's incredible," she managed, watching as her daughter dissolved into giggles when Buddy nuzzled her cheek, his mission accomplished. "Ryan said he was trained to count steps and distances." Lily explained with the authority of someone sharing classified information. "For finding bombs and stuff." The casual reference to Buddy's dangerous past sent a shiver through Laura. Sometimes she forgot that the gentle guardian who slept at the foot of Lily's bed had once moved through war zones, that the same teeth that delicately took treats from her daughter's palm had been trained as weapons. What Ryan hadn't told Laura, what she would only discover in the harrowing days to come, was that Buddy had been specialized in protection detail, assigned to guard high-ranking officials during their most vulnerable moments in combat zones. He was not just a bomb detector or patrol dog. He was a highly trained guardian whose protective instincts had been honed to near supernatural levels. That night, As Laura locked up the house, she noticed Buddy standing alert at the front window, a low rumble building in his chest as he stared at a car that had passed their house for the third time that evening. "What is it, boy?" she asked, moving to his side and peering into the darkness. The unfamiliar sedan slowed as it approached their house, then accelerated away. Laura felt a prickle of unease crawl up her spine. She double-checked the locks and set the security alarm. A system Mark had insisted on installing despite their neighborhood's low crime rate. If she'd known then what danger approached their threshold, she might have gathered Lily and fled into the night. Instead, she scratched Buddy behind his ears and whispered, "Just being cautious, right, boy?" Buddy's eyes never left the window, his body tense with a knowledge his human family couldn't access. What Laura couldn't know, was that her position as branch manager at First Regional Bank had placed her on a very specific list. That the cartels that ran drugs through their quiet Midwestern state had experienced a major setback when their money laundering route through the bank had been disrupted by new security protocols she had implemented. That men who measured human value only in terms of usefulness had decided Laura Mercer was the solution to their problem. The person whose access codes and authorization could reopen the pipeline of money their organization required. These men had been watching her for weeks, learning her routines, understanding that her daughter was both her weakness and their leverage. They had factored everything into their plan except for the 85 pounds of military-trained muscle and loyalty that had entered the Mercer household 3 months earlier. The next morning unfolded with ordinary rhythms: breakfast preparations, Lily's complaints about math homework, the rush to find a missing shoe before the school bus arrived. Buddy supervised it all from his preferred spot in the kitchen, his alert eyes tracking their movements. "Don't forget I have that late meeting tonight," Laura reminded Lily as she packed her daughter's lunch. "Mrs. Jenkins will stay until I get home around 9. Lily's face fell. "Can't I just stay with Buddy? I'm almost 10 now." Laura smiled and kissed the top of her head. "Not yet, sweetie, but Buddy will be here too." What neither of them realized was that their conversation was being monitored, a listening device planted in Laura's car during one of her trips to the grocery store. The men who had placed it now had the information they needed. The house would have only the child, an elderly babysitter, and the dog for several valuable hours. Laura's day at the bank passed in a blur of meetings and customer consultations, the weight of single parenthood and financial pressure a constant companion. When her phone rang at 8:15 p.m., she expected Mrs. Jenkins confirming that Lily had finished her homework and was getting ready for bed. Instead, an unfamiliar male voice spoke words that turned her blood to ice. "Miss Mercer, we have your daughter." The world tilted sharply and Laura gripped her desk to remain upright. "Who is this?" she demanded, her voice a strangled whisper. "If you want to see Lily again, you will provide us with the access codes to override the new security protocols at your bank." The voice continued calmly, as if discussing a business transaction. "The ones implemented last month." Laura's mind raced with confusion and terror. What have you done with my daughter?" she managed, fumbling for her car keys with trembling hands. "Where is she?" "Your daughter is safe for now," the voice replied. "The old woman who was watching her has been incapacitated. Nothing personal, just business. You have 1 hour to deliver the codes to the address we will text you. If you contact the police, we will know and your daughter will suffer the consequences." The call ended abruptly, leaving Laura frozen in horror. Her mind flashed to Mrs. Jenkins, kind, grandmotherly Mrs. Jenkins who baked cookies and knitted sweaters for Lily. What had they done to her? And Lily, her sweet, vulnerable daughter who had already lost so much. A text message arrived with an address at the edge of town, an abandoned warehouse district. Laura's training as a bank manager included protocols for robbery and hostage situations. She knew she should call the police immediately, but the threat against Lily paralyzed her capacity for procedure. Instead, She found herself racing to her car, terror clawing at her throat as she sped toward home, needing to see for herself, needing to understand what had happened before she decided what to do. What the kidnappers hadn't known, what Laura herself had forgotten in her panic, was that while they had accounted for a child and an elderly babysitter, they had severely underestimated the third occupant of the Mercer home. 20 minutes earlier, 3 men had approached the Mercer house with practiced efficiency. Their intelligence had indicated a simple operation: subdue the elderly babysitter, take the child, leave no witnesses. The security system had been disabled remotely by their tech specialist. The back door was unlocked with professional tools. The first man entered the kitchen silently, taser ready for the babysitter they expected to find there. Instead, he found himself face to face with 85 pounds of war-trained canine fury. Buddy had sensed their approach before they had even reached the property line. Years of training in combat zones had taught him to recognize the specific cadence of threat, the too careful footsteps, the controlled breathing of men on mission. He had herded Lily and Mrs. Jenkins upstairs to the bathroom at the first sign of danger, nudging them insistently until they complied, confused but sensing the urgency in his demeanor. Then he had positioned himself at the top of the kitchen stairs, muscles coiled, waiting for the threat to materialize. When the first intruder stepped into view, Buddy launched himself with a focused savagery that his military handlers would have recognized immediately. There was no barking. Bark warnings were for deterrence. Buddy had been trained for silent neutralization. His teeth found the man's weapon arm with surgical precision, the pressure of his jaw crushing bone, and rendering the limb useless before the intruder could even process what was happening. The man's scream brought his companions running, a tactical error that Buddy had been trained to exploit. The second intruder fell to a strike at the back of the knee, tendons severed by teeth evolved for bringing down prey. The third man managed to draw his weapon, but Buddy's training included specific protocols for armed assailants. He went low, targeting the vulnerable soft tissue of the thigh where major arteries lay close to the surface. By the time Laura's car screeched into the driveway 12 minutes later, the attempted kidnapping had been decisively thwarted. She burst through the front door, her mind filled with worst-case scenarios, only to find 3 incapacitated men on her kitchen floor and a blood-spattered Buddy standing guard at the bottom of the stairs, his posture still rigid with protective fury. "Lily!" Laura screamed, fighting panic. "Lily! Mom!" The small voice came from upstairs, and Laura nearly collapsed with relief. "Stay there, baby. Don't come down." She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and dialed 911, her eyes never leaving Buddy, who maintained his position with unwavering focus. It was only when the police had arrived, when paramedics had confirmed that Mrs. Jenkins had suffered nothing worse than a mild concussion from being shoved aside, when Lily was safely in her arms, that Laura fully understood what had happened. "Your dog saved them," the police officer explained, looking at Buddy with newfound respect as animal control determined whether he should be considered dangerous. "These men are known cartel enforcers. They wouldn't have left witnesses." The officer's radio crackled with updates about the simultaneous raid on the warehouse where Laura had been directed to deliver the codes, a trap that would likely have claimed her life as well. "That dog," the officer continued, shaking his head in amazement. "He didn't just attack randomly. He incapacitated them methodically, disabling arms, mobility, weapon hands." "Military training," Laura whispered, watching as Lily sat on the stairs stroking Buddy's fur, the dog having finally relaxed his guard once the threat was neutralized and authorities had taken control. "They told us he'd been part of a protection unit, but I never really understood what that meant." If you enjoy the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. That night, after the police had gone, after the house had been secured with additional patrols promised throughout the night, Laura sat on Lily's bed, watching her daughter finally sleep with Buddy's heavy head resting on her legs. "You knew, didn't you?" she whispered to the dog, whose amber eyes studied her face with an intelligence that seemed to transcend species. "You've been on guard since the moment you arrived." Buddy's tail thumped once against the bed, acknowledgement of her words, or perhaps simply contentment that his pack was safe. Laura reached out and stroked his head, her fingers tracing the small scars that she now understood were badges of his service, evidence of earlier battles fought on distant battlefields. "Thank you," she murmured, tears finally falling now that the danger had passed. "Thank you for protecting our family." In the days that followed, as the investigation revealed the full scope of the cartel's operation and the danger Laura and Lily had faced, their home became a temporary hub of police activity. Buddy accepted the law enforcement presence with professional tolerance, recognizing fellow protectors, though he remained vigilantly attached to Lily's side. Ryan arrived within hours of hearing what had happened, his face pale with concern and pride as police officials debriefed him on his former battle companion's actions. "He was the best protection dog in the program," Ryan explained as they sat in Laura's living room, watching Lily and Buddy in the backyard through the window. "That's why his retirement was so controversial. Some higher-ups wanted him reassigned rather than retired, but his handler insisted he'd earned his civilian life." Laura turned to her brother, realizing there was more to the story than she'd been told. "Why did you really send him to us, Ryan?" Her brother's eyes remained fixed on the dog, who now gently took a tennis ball from Lily's hand. "Mark asked me to look out for you both before his last deployment," Ryan said softly. "After he died, I tried, but I'm not stateside enough to be the protection he wanted for you. When Buddy was being retired, it felt I don't know, like the universe was offering a solution." He finally looked at her, eyes suspiciously bright. "These dogs, Laura, they don't stop serving just because we give them discharge papers. Protection is woven into who they are. I knew he'd guard you both with his life because that's who he is. I just never imagined he'd have to prove it like this." As spring turned to summer, life in the Mercer household found a new rhythm. The bank implemented enhanced security measures, and Laura was given a temporary leave of absence with full pay, recognition of her unwitting role in disrupting a major money laundering operation. Lily, rather than being traumatized by the experience, seemed to have found a new confidence, proudly telling classmates about her hero dog, though Laura had insisted on a sanitized version of events appropriate for fourth-grade audiences. Buddy's story, once it reached military channels, became something of a legend. The retired K-9 who had thwarted 3 armed cartel members while protecting a child and an elderly woman caught the attention of the very military command that had debated his retirement. On a warm Saturday in June, Laura found herself standing beside Lily in the town square as the mayor presented Buddy with an honorary service medal. A crowd of community members and uniformed military personnel applauding as the Belgian Malinois sat at perfect attention, as if understanding the ceremony was in his honor. In recognition of extraordinary courage and dedication to duty, even in retirement, the mayor announced, draping the medal over Buddy's head while camera flashes captured the moment. Lily beamed with pride, her hand resting on Buddy's back. Laura, watching them together, felt a complex wave of emotions: gratitude, love, and a new appreciation for the unexpected ways healing and protection can enter a broken life. Later that evening, as fireflies began to dance in their backyard, Laura sat on the porch steps watching Lily and Buddy play their favorite game, hide and seek among the garden shrubs, Buddy politely pretending it took effort to find the giggling child whose scent he could likely track from miles away. Her brother sat beside her, both of them nursing cold drinks in the summer twilight. "You know," Ryan said thoughtfully, "in the military, we have this saying about the bonds formed in combat, that those who stand beside you when everything is falling apart are your true family." He nodded toward Buddy, who had located Lily and was being rewarded with enthusiastic ear scratches. "I think that applies across species lines too." Laura smiled, feeling for the first time since Mark's death that her family wasn't just surviving but rebuilding something whole and strong. "Mark would have loved him," she said softly. Ryan laughed. "Are you kidding?" Mark was terrified of dogs. Remember how he'd cross the street to avoid even a chihuahua? The memory, one Laura had somehow forgotten in her grief, bubbled up unexpectedly, and she found herself laughing, truly laughing, for what felt like the first time in years. He was such a brave man in every other way, she marveled, wiping tears of mirth from her eyes. But put him near a Yorkie, and he'd start planning escape routes. Ryan put his arm around his sister's shoulders. "Maybe that's why the universe sent you Buddy instead of bringing Mark back," he suggested gently. "Different kinds of protection for different chapters of your lives." As summer faded into fall, the Mercer household settled into patterns both old and new. Laura returned to the bank, now with enhanced security and a personal protection detail that would remain in place until the Cartel trial concluded. Lily thrived in school, her previous silence replaced by a confident voice that teachers attributed to her remarkable resilience. And Buddy continued his vigilant watch, though perhaps with a bit more relaxation as the immediate threat receded. His evening patrols of the property perimeter became more of a casual stroll, often with Lily as his companion, the two of them communicating in that wordless language they had developed. On the anniversary of Mark's death, Laura took Lily and Buddy to the cemetery, something she had done alone the previous year, Lily having refused to accompany her. This time, her daughter walked confidently beside her, one hand in Laura's, the other resting on Buddy's back as he paced solemnly between them. At Mark's grave, Lily knelt and placed the small stones they had collected, a tradition from Mark's Jewish heritage. "I think Dad sent Buddy to us," she said matter-of-factly, arranging the stones in a perfect circle. "Not like literally sent him, but like made sure we found each other." Laura knelt beside her daughter, struck by the simple wisdom of children. "I think you might be right, sweetie." Buddy stood at attention beside the grave, his posture almost military in its formality, as if paying respects to the man whose family he now guarded. Later that night, as Lily slept peacefully under Buddy's watchful eye, Laura sat at her kitchen table reviewing family photo albums, a task that had been too painful to contemplate in the early days of grief. She found herself smiling at images of Mark, no longer feeling only the sharp edge of loss, but also genuine gratitude for the time they had shared. A soft whine drew her attention to Buddy, who had abandoned his post at Lily's bedside to check on her. He placed his head in her lap, those intelligent amber eyes studying her face as if assessing her emotional state. "I'm okay, boy," she assured him, scratching behind his ears the way he preferred. "Just remembering." Buddy sighed and settled at her feet, apparently deciding she required company rather than privacy for her reminiscence. As Laura turned another page in the album, a photo slipped free. Mark in his National Guard uniform, arm thrown casually around Ryan, both men grinning broadly before a deployment. Behind them, barely visible in the background, was a training yard where several military dogs worked with their handlers. Laura's breath caught as she peered more closely at the image. There, in the distant background, was a Belgian Malinois with distinctive markings that she now knew intimately, a young Buddy, working with his handler years before he would enter their lives. "Ryan," she whispered, reaching for her phone and taking a photo of the image to send to her brother. "Is this?" His response came minutes later. "I'll be damned. Same base, same year. Never noticed him in the background before. Some things are just meant to be, sis." Laura stared at the photograph, at this unexpected connection that had existed long before she understood its significance. She reached down to touch Buddy's head, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. This guardian who had been moving in parallel to her family's journey for years before their paths finally converged. "Thank you for finding us," she whispered. In that quiet moment of recognition, Laura understood a truth that would have eluded her in the depths of her grief. That healing rarely arrives in expected forms, that protection often comes from the most surprising sources, and that family, true family, can emerge from bonds forged in the crucible of shared survival. Outside, the autumn wind rustled through leaves beginning to turn golden and red, nature's reminder that change, while sometimes painful, carried its own beauty. Inside, a woman who had once thought herself irreparably broken sat with her hand on the head of a retired warrior who had taught her family how to feel safe again. Two souls who had found each other precisely when they needed to, guided by forces neither could fully explain but both deeply trusted. The Guardian's watch continued, steadfast and true. If you enjoy the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.